I'm Sydney, and I'm going to be talking about the 2 guidelines for the effective communication out of the 5. And I'll pull up the PowerPoint for that. Okay, the first guideline is focusing on the overall communication system. Communication is systemic. This means that there are many different parts when it comes to conversating. When we apply the systems to conflict, we can see that how we deal with conflict is shaped by the overall systems of relationships and communication. By Julia Wood. People have learned that defensive and distrustful will not be able to respond openly, even with good technique conflict skills. And there are the 3 implications in every conflict that includes you, another person, and the relationship between you two. The second guideline is how timing affects how we communicate about conflicts. There are 3 chronemics that help make solving conflicts effective. The first one is to not engage in conversation with the other person if they are not fully there and are not going to be fully present in the conversation. The second was to be considerate of when the person is comfortable enough to have a constructive conversation. And the last one is not to bracket, which is bringing up sideline problems to the conflict when it just makes things worse every time. Instead, just deal with the immediate problem. The first 2 guidelines for effective communication during conflict are extremely important. And the 2 guidelines I talked about were focusing on overall communication systems and how timing affects how we communicate.
The third guideline in conflict communication is the importance of aiming for a win-win conflict. And this style of conflict resolution is best when there is a relationship between 2 people who usually care greatly about one another. This could either be a relationship between you and a significant other or you and a best friend. With this style of communication in place, you are showing that you are both committed to the relationship as well as the other person. The first step in this resolution style is by identifying your feelings and desires. When it comes time to do this, make sure you are using language that is descriptive and not vague. The second step in this resolution type is identifying what the other person is feeling. It's important to ask and also listen while the other person is communicating. Lastly, using language that promotes cooperation and avoids sounding defensive is also key. By doing this, you are creating an environment that proves you are listening and trying to understand what the other person wants. The fourth guideline is honoring yourself, your partner, and the relationship. The textbook mentions that this is important to keep all 3 in balance when conflict arises. The main idea behind honoring yourself and the relationship is not disregarding the feelings present. You should not dismiss the feelings of yourself or the other person. And by maintaining this concept, you are allowing both individuals and the relationship to win.
Grace is the 5th guideline of communication in times of conflict, but what is it, or how is it important, or when is it necessary? Wood defines grace as forgiving or putting aside our own needs, whether there's no sense, especially when there's no sense of obligation. For example, if you and your best friend get into a fight and you decide to genuinely just to forgive them and not hold any negative feelings or any grudges towards them, this could be considered an act of grace. In a true act of grace, we cannot expect anything in return. So if we forgive them, we should not expect them to give us something in return just because we do. We don't forgive them because we want something in return. We do it because we want to. However, Wood states that grace is not always appropriate for this situation. It's very situational. So let's say your friend takes advantage of your grace and your kindness, and that this repetitive behavior can be abusive, and then your grace should no longer be extended to them because it's just abusive. In closing today, we reviewed the 5 guidelines of effective communication in times of conflict. Perhaps next time when you are in an interpersonal communication, like conflict between you or your friend or anyone, you might want to utilize one or more of these to help solve or aid yourself in the problem. Thank you.